2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometers have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies. Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking.
Hello there, and a very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you through until 4 o'clock. Lots to pack into the programme. As I was just telling Peter, we're going to be looking at the stories of the day in just a moment. Then we're heading off to look at the honours list. Do you think the honours list is fit for purpose? Is it honouring the right people? I mean, I look at some of the people on the list and I'm like, why? Why? What have you done? I mean, above and beyond what? You got paid a fortune to be an actor, or a TV presenter. I don't get it. Doing something you love. If you do extra, like Idris Elba, brilliant. I've got all the time in the world for that, because that's stuff they didn't have to do. But let me know if you think the right people are being honoured. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back. So we're going to be looking at that. We're also going to be looking at sex work. As I mean, this is an extraordinary story, looking at sex workers and how many women now, particularly women, men too though, but mainly women, are turning towards the oldest profession, which so often happens when there's a cost of living crisis. So going to be looking into that. Also talking about China and Taiwan as things heat up down there. And then we're going to be looking back at our journalists' favourite stories or biggest stories of the year. So all of that is to come. And of course we want lots of you on the programme. That's what this programme is all about. It's about your voices. So please do be the conversation. Pick up that phone, 0344 499 1000, or you can text if you want me to be your voice, 87222. Put the word talk, put the word talk, excuse me, my voice is going, up front, and that will come through to this studio. And so all of that is to come. But the other big story I want to talk to you about is that 1 in 3 now believe that Britishness is dependent on being born in the UK. Are you one of them? Do you think you can only be British if you're born here? This is sort of leading on, isn't it, from what we were talking about yesterday. So do you think that it is only that if you're born here, that you must have ancestry here, that you can truly call yourself British? Or do you believe that being British is something different, that being British is having shared values? I mean, I've often done over my decades phone-ins on what it is to be British, and I don't think anybody really knows. It just sort of is. You know, is it being good at queuing? Is it, what is it to be British? So I'm going to ask you that story today. Do you think you have to be born here to be absolutely British? If you weren't born here, but you're a British citizen, do you feel British? When do you feel British? And what makes you feel like you are British? What is it to be British? If you could answer that, I would love to hear from you. So we're doing that as a phone in as well. 0344 499 1000. Well, joining me now to discuss the stories of the day, I'm delighted to say, is Michael Crick, broadcaster and journalist. Michael, a very good afternoon to you. What is it?
Good afternoon.
What is it to be British?
Well, I've been thinking about this too, and I just think it's a whole hodgepodge of things. I'm tempted to say it's people who think they're British are British, but of course that will no doubt cause all sorts of a row. But I mean, you can't just say, well, you've got to be born in Britain to be British. I mean, that would have excluded Prince Philip, for instance, who was born in Corfu. It would exclude Boris Johnson, who was born in New York.
That may not have been a bad thing. Entirely.
Indeed, but I suspect some of the people who are big Boris Johnson supporters are the same people who think that to be British you should be born in Britain.
Yeah.
And after all, in the old days there were lots of people people from long-standing white British families who lived in this country on these islands for thousands of years, if not forever, who went off to the British Empire and had children there. And so did that make them Indian? Did it make them African? Did it make them British? It's very complicated, and I think it's very difficult to set down hard rules on this. And obviously there are rules on citizenship and so on, but I think that it's really about do you feel British? I feel British. I feel English, and I think you'd struggle to show I'm not British, but I don't think whether we queue or not. I mean, in the old days, people used to queue. When I was a boy, people used to queue a lot more than they do now. But I don't think you can say if you don't queue, you're not British.
Yeah, I've asked this question for so many years,
Yes.
and I've never received an answer. What it is to be British? What is Britishness?
Yes, well, I'm going to disappoint you, I'm afraid, Petrie. I don't really have an answer, apart from that, it is a combination of ancestry, partly language, but even there are many British people for whom English is not a first language.
Yeah.
Certain Welsh people, for example, people who speak Gaelic in the north of Scotland and so on, but also millions and millions of people who've emigrated to this country who do not speak English as a first language at the moment, but some of them will learn a lot of English and come to speak it, but I don't think you can exclude them as not being British. And you know, they've come here. They've come here determined to make a new life for themselves, to be British, to be part of our community. So I think you've got to be tolerant and liberal about this, and not be excluding people, and not being. You can make a, you know, if you exclude people, you're excluding a lot of very valuable people who are good for our country and good for our community. And I think that we are, although I think that current immigration levels for the last few years have been too high, overall, I think this country, generation after generation, has benefited from new waves of migrants. And we're now seeing that, you know, many people taking leading positions in our country, in politics, in medicine, in the law, in all sorts of professions, in entertainment and so on, are people first, second, third generation migrants. And that's all great news. And take football. I mean, you know,
where would we be lost?
Yeah. That football teams would be, well, they'd be very much inferior if you confined it to people who were white and whose families had lived here for hundreds of years. Yeah. So it's not something I get too worried about. And I think you need to take a liberal, tolerant attitude to it.
That's a good way to end this year with that. You don't even have to be British, it seems, to get an honorary honour. Because the honours list is out. You've got the captain of the football team, who got the women's football team, who got
the manager.
Yeah, the manager. Sorry, yes, who got an honorary honour. An honorary honour.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to be British for that. What do you make of the honours list going forward and the selection processes of it?
Well, I think this year's honours list is a bit boring, frankly. There's not many people I've heard of. But let's be realistic about this. I mean, there are thousands of names on the honours list, and to study it properly and go through it properly takes several hours. And occasionally I have been known to do that. I haven't done that this time. Just looking out to see if any friends of mine have got an MBE or something like that. And going through it, you see how a lot of these people are, you know, upstanding and brilliant and generous members of their communities who've contributed a lot. And they're not, you know, the headlines are all about the entertainers and the sports people and the politicians. But most of the honours list is people whose contributions to society and to this country have gone unsung. And so I like the honours list. I mean, I think they get the balance wrong from time to time, and from time to time there are people, and I think, why have they not got an honour? You know, they've been doing this for decades, and there may be something in their background I don't know about. And it actually, I would say, if you don't like the names on the honours list, I'd say this to anybody. You can always make nominations. I've done that in the past, and I've been apparently I've been successful in that. In the past, I've nominated 3 very different people, and they all ended up with an honour. Now, it may well be that it wasn't because of my nomination, it was because other people had nominated them as well. Probably was, actually. But the process, it takes a bit of time, and it takes years, actually, but anybody can do it. And you've got to, depending on what area of work they're involved in, you've got to find a government department that will sort of sponsor your honour, and you've got to submit forms. And it's very difficult in a way, because you submit these forms explaining what this person has done, and it's much harder than applying for a job yourself, because you may not be totally sure of all the facts about their life. And what the honours committee is like in the different government departments is people who've done charitable work and good works unpaid. It's not just about people who've made lots of money and so on. And therefore you've got the people that you can think of, I'm talking to viewers and listeners right now, people you can think of who have made that kind of contribution to their communities and to charitable works and been unpaid and unrecognised. They are prime candidates for honours. Yeah. And if you think there's somebody there that deserves one, well, put in a nomination. It may take 2 or 3 years, but often they succeed. And I think it's a jolly good thing. It's a way of recognising people and acknowledging them without huge public cost. and everybody feels great about it, and they have a little lunch, and they go along to the palace with one of their loved ones, and that's great. Now, honours for people who've made contributions to political parties, I feel uncomfortable about.
Yeah, just smacks of cronyism, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, and it's sort of verging on bribery, actually, and particularly honours that involve membership of the House of Lords, which is, after all, our legislature, and we're meant to be a democracy, and people shouldn't be really buying places in the House of Lords, which quite clearly does go on. But overall, I think it's a jolly good thing. The one thing I would say is I don't think journalists should accept honours, because...
I was just going to say, I'll send you my CV and you can work on mine. Oh, for goodness sake, Michael. No, I'm absolutely undeserving.
Have you had an honour, Petrie?
Absolutely. I've got as many honours as I deserve, and that is 0. So
all right.
I have got 1 medal, but that I did earn. But
what
yeah.
Was that for the 100 yards at school?
No, that's a United Nations medal for being a reporter in Bosnia. Right. I felt like I earned that one, but no, I don't know. It's interesting though, because you have French and Saunders. They were offered an OBE each, and they turned it down, saying, look, we don't think we're deserving of them. Not this time, some time ago. We don't think we're deserving of them because all we're doing is getting really well paid for having lots of fun, and there are lots of other people who are deserving. And that's how I feel about actors getting it, or TV presenters or journalists even getting it when they're just doing the jobs that they're paid to do. That I find a bit annoying.
Although, I mean, there are a lot of entertainers and people from the arts world who do a lot of good for this country in terms of, selling films abroad and appearing on Broadway and promoting this country and earning money for this country.
But they're not doing it selflessly.
No, they're not. But if they are doing a lot of good for the country as well, I mean, most of what we do isn't selfless. But if they do it for the country as well, then that's a case for them being honoured. I mean, I'm a big football fan. I think too many footballers get honours, and clearly the honours list is drawn up by people in government to grab headlines, and then that's why you have so many entertainers and sports people.
Yeah, like I said, I don't mind if they've done something in addition to just earning a lot of money, having a great time.
That's the important thing.
Yeah, that's the important thing. Yeah.
And then, of course, the other thing they look at behind the scenes is, where do they pay their taxes? Have they been avoiding tax or evading tax? Have they been good taxpayers? Which I think is a perfectly legitimate question for the authority.
I tell you what, one of the names that surprised me, and then we're going to have to take a break, but was David Walliams, because he's just been dropped by his publisher, and I was surprised by that. I mean, clearly he's not been found guilty of anything, and all of but again, you're just saying that there's been problems hanging around certain people for quite a long time, and yet they still get honoured.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that familiar with his case, and I think the recent stuff that came to light was probably too late to sort of get his name crossed off.
Yeah.
Or indeed, if they had crossed it off at the last moment, then that would have caused a huge story.
Yeah, because he's been found guilty of nothing. But
exactly.
it is.
But sometimes they add people on at the last moment. I remember, I'm a big Manchester United fan, and in 1999, Sir Alex Ferguson was added on at the last moment by Tony Blair's press secretary, Alistair Campbell, after United won the treble. That was, I think, a matter of days before that was the birthday honours that he got into, if I remember rightly. So you can make last-minute additions. So you could argue, why not last-minute deletions?
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if it still does what it should do. But Michael, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 4 o'clock, and with me the fabulous Michael Crick, broadcaster and journalist, and we're going through today's stories. Michael, Unite boss, inevitable that Sir Keir Starmer will be replaced. And this is from one of the biggest unions, isn't it, Unite, or is it the biggest, saying that they're not satisfied with what Labour is doing and they think that it'll be their undoing if they don't replace Starmer.
Well, that's right. I mean, Unite are one of the biggest unions. There's a sort of rivalry between them and Unison as to who is the biggest. And they are, for a long time, for decades, they've been a huge contributor to the Labour Party and a huge players in Labour Party politics. But in recent years, they've been threatening to disaffiliate from the Labour Party and abandon the Labour Party. And so these comments are not that surprising. I'm not sure Starmer will be terrified by these comments. And my own view is that Starmer, and I know this is probably in a minority of political commentators, I think Starmer will probably survive this year. I mean, I don't say that with huge confidence, but I think the odds are slightly that he will survive the year, simply because there isn't an obvious replacement who is suddenly going to rejuvenate the Labour Party and make them all incredibly popular and, you know, sort out the government and put them back on the right track.
Well, she even went further, didn't she, by suggesting the people that this is Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, said that she didn't want to see it being Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting. I mean, pretty much Ed Miliband. She pretty much listed everybody she didn't want. They're the only names that we think are going to be in the ring anyway.
I know, and Sharon Graham, I mean, she's been a very interesting leader of Unite, because Len McCluskey was always getting involved in Labour Party politics, and a lot of people in the party thought he got far too involved.
Yeah.
Whereas Sharon Graham was elected on a programme some years ago of not getting involved in Labour politics and concentrating on trade union matters. And so this intervention rather goes against that. But I don't really think Unite matters that much in terms of nothing like in the way that it used to do in terms of Labour politics. And if Starmer is forced out, his successor will be chosen by ordinary Labour Party members, not by large trade unions. And of course, a trade union has got a lot of grievances with this government, and they have a lot of grievances with all governments. And it's right that they should be able to voice those, but it's not like the days when what Unite said really mattered. I mean, you know, in the 1970s, the leader of the Transport and General Workers Union, which were the predecessor to the Unite, Jack Jones, he was reckoned at one point to be more powerful than the Prime Minister. Well, I don't think Sharon Graham is more powerful than the Prime Minister, or indeed most other ministers.
Yeah, I remember all of those names because my dad was an industrial correspondent at the time, so I met a lot of them. Right. Ray Buckton and all of that.
Yes.
You know, he was at the BBC. Ray was a lovely man, actually.
He was a lovely. In fact, he came to speak in one of my debates when I was president of the Oxford Union, and I was rather shocked that he, even though he was the railway union leader, he came by car. went back by car.
He was a gentle giant. He really was. I used to get dragged to all of these sort of union Christmas drinks and things by my dad.
Oh.
So I've met a lot of them. Let's turn our attention now to something that Keir Starmer may find will hound him through 26, and that is this review now to be done on the information failures regarding the British Egyptian activist Alaa Abdel Fattah, because Yvette Cooper has said that we were all unaware of these tweets, these past tweets.
Well, it does seem extraordinary.
It's weird.
The ordinary background checks weren't made before they came out with. Well, I mean, it's welcoming him back. I mean, he was made a British citizen, wasn't he, by the last government back in 2021. But it seems that nobody throughout the years has really done those background checks, and it's astonishing how often in the last year very elementary errors have been made in government. And I'm just trying to think of some other examples, but there have been several. And I wonder if, basically our civil servants are either grossly overworked, or there's a lack of morale there, or they're not recruiting people of the same caliber as in the old days. But and it's probably a combination of all of those. But in this particular case, there's been all this talk about how he ought to be deported, and there's going to be a review of that. I think it all boils down to the fact. He made these comments, his anti-Semitic comments, back in around about 2012, wasn't it? The question was, and he has now apologised, and his apology does seem to be genuine, but I think it ought to be tested a bit. And there's I was hearing today about how there's a comment on his Facebook site about how he's the victim of a Zionist campaign. Well, that rather suggests that perhaps he hasn't
changed.
His apology is not genuine.
Yeah.
So it needs to be tested properly. But if he is genuinely horrified by what he said before and contrite and everything about it, well, I believe in forgiveness, and but I don't know what the answer is to that yet. It needs to be properly explored.
Well, and
also,
the failures have to be checked, right? That
Sorry?
is not good enough.
Yeah, and the systems need to be beefed up. And it's no use just spending 5 minutes seeing what somebody said on Twitter or whatever. You've got to do a proper social media checks. And you've got to check in other places as well as to where because people clean up their social media output and delete things they've said in the past. So the testing process has really got to be rigorous. And it clearly wasn't rigorous enough in this case.
No, one way or the other, it's not good.
No, and the one thing this government can say is, well, it wasn't just us. The previous government, the Conservative government, clearly made the same errors. And so it's a difficult one for the Conservatives to campaign against the Labour government on, although obviously Reform can do so because they've not been in government.
Yeah, their hands are clean on this issue. Yeah, it is really, really interesting to me. I can't believe they didn't know. That's the only thing I just can't. It just seems there's something off. Something off.
When I was talking earlier about the number of other errors in government, it's like all the releases of prisoners who shouldn't be released.
Yeah.
There are clearly huge faults in all sorts of systems within government. Now, there always have been, but they do seem to be becoming more regular and more embarrassing.
And more ridiculous by the day. Just before I let you go, Michael, what we love in this country the most is shifting the blame onto other people. I think that we love that. Cabinet Office blames administrative error over mistaken release of historical Andrew documents, formerly known as prints. Yes.
Well, what does that mean? It means that somebody didn't look at the documents closely enough, I suppose. Or it's possible that the documents were put in one pile and somebody thought that they were the pile to be released rather than the pile not to be released. And we are probably talking about real, genuine paper documents here as opposed to digital documents.
Yeah.
But I can't really understand why they kept them secret. I read that there wasn't anything very particularly
really
interesting in the documents anyway. And there's always been a sort of deference towards the royal family and go, oh, well, these are, this is stuff to do with the royal, better not release it. There's much greater secrecy surrounding anything to do with the royal family. But in this case, he's a sort of demoted member of the royal family. So you could argue
no more privacy.
They should be released. And if they're all to do with his travel arrangements, well, is anybody really interested? Oh, well, he's going to catch this plane and it'll arrive in New York at that time. I mean, maybe there are details of sort of security procedures in there, and maybe that's what's worrying them. And maybe, you know, they ought to be redacted. Maybe they haven't had time to redact them. But it's far too secretive about all the material that is released, or rather not released, about the royal family.
Yeah, I completely agree. And from now on, I don't think there should be any deference at all to Andrew.
Well, I mean,
whatsoever.
if you're releasing stuff that, you know, would help nasty people attack members of the royal family, then that you've got to be very careful about that. But most of it is just saving the royal family from embarrassment. And I don't think we should be we shouldn't be saving the royal family from embarrassment.
Absolutely not, unless, of course, they're going to give me an honour.
That would be really embarrassing.
Michael, thank you. It's lovely to talk to you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Petrie.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
I'll definitely be speaking to you in 2026. Right, quick break, and then I'll be back. Hello and a very good afternoon to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until 4 o'clock. And I'm taking your calls this afternoon on two things really. I know you can handle both. One of them is the honours system still fit for purpose? Does it honour the right people? And if you had to give an award to, if you wanted to give an award to somebody, who would it be that you think is being ignored by this list? Me, Petrie Hosken. No, I'm joking. But also, we're talking about what is it to be British? When we look at a report that says a number of people who believe that Britishness is something you're born with has almost doubled in 2 years. But what is it to be British? And like I said, I've been asking this question for such a long time. And nobody can really tell me what it is to be British, and yet we hold it very dear, don't we? Oh, well, we're British. That's being British. That is a British thing. we're British. We hold it very dear, but I'm still not convinced I know exactly what that is. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. And you can text, put the word talk and your message to 87222. Now, though, turning our attention to the honours system, which, of course, the New Year's honours list was released under embargo late last night, actually. But most of the papers have got, I must have had a leading copy because they've got all the names in it. 1,000 odd people, nearly 2,000 people in the honours list. But are they honouring the right people? You've got people, it's around 2,000, yeah. So we've got people like Matt Lucas, who's now an OBE. I love him. I think he's brilliant. You've got one of the Chuckle brothers has been given a gong. Bill Bailey is an MBE now. Paula Radcliffe, an OBE. Cynthia Ervo is an MBE. Why? I mean, look, she's a fantastic singer. She's a brilliant actor. She's the actress, if you're not sure about her name, who plays the Wicked Witch in Wicked, right? But is that enough? Is it enough just to be good at what you do and get well paid for it to get an honour? Idris Elba got an honour for being a brilliant actor, but also for his charity work. That I can live with that. But I'm not sure that it is honouring the right people for the right reasons. Well, to discuss this further with me is Claire James, awards and honour expert advisor. Hello there, lovely to see you. Thank you for joining me.
And you, how are you?
Very well, actually, in this Twixtmas, whatever it's called.
Yes, right.
I still don't know. I still don't know when the bins go out, Claire. That is my.
No, I can't help. I've got no idea. I actually said to somebody the other day, if anybody brings another piece of cardboard into my house, I'm going to have a meltdown for sure.
Yeah, I've got a mountain of it, and I absolutely don't know when the bins. It's every year. I never know when the bins are being collected. One thing is for sure, though, Claire, I know that what I'm not collecting this year is an award, right? So I'm definitely not getting one of those. What do you make of this honours list?
I'm actually really thrilled with this year's honours list. Actually, it's given a really broad representation. There's deep community values in there, and there's a real focus on impact, culture, and community over the traditional hierarchy that we're used to seeing. Equally, the demographic data is quite striking on this list. I mean, 50% of all honours given over CBE have gone to women, which is actually the strongest representation since 2020, and I'm really pleased to see that.
Is that tokenism, or should we be looking at that as potentially tokenism, or we don't award enough women therefore?
I think potentially there was fewer women applying previously.
Okay.
I would say so, absolutely. I think the honours list has always been predominantly male heavy, but I don't necessarily think that's because it's tokenism. I think it's probably because women have felt lesser about coming forward. But actually, you know, we've seen the England Lionesses feature really heavily this year after their Euros win, which is absolutely brilliant. And it's not just the captains or the coaches. You know, Leah Williamson got her CBE and Serena got her damehood, but 4 members of the squad as well got their MBEs, you know, which again is another nod to the fact that...
But why have they got them? I mean, you know, they're doing something they love. They're not doing it selflessly. You know, this is their job. They love it. They wouldn't want to do anything else. The fact that they're good at it, and the knock-on effect of that will be that young girls now may play more football. Is that deserving of an honour? That is always what I come back to, is actors like Claudia Winkleman, not in this list, but got one before this list came out, for services to television. It's like, she's been extremely well paid to do a job she absolutely loves, and probably, like me, couldn't do anything else if we tried. And I love her. I think she's great, but really?
I think, you know, the honours have been around for a very long time. They've been in place for over 100 years, prior to mainstream media, prior to social media. And one of the core pillars that was, you know, in place at that time was honouring people that were putting Great Britain on the world stage and, you know, making Britain great, taking it out, you know, to the world and saying, you know, we're great, we're achieving incredible things. And so there's still an element of that.
But it's sort of an accidental byproduct in a way to doing what they love doing.
I mean, I would also say, more often than not, and Idris Elba was a really, really good example. A lot of the celebrities that are named are actually tend to be doing a great deal of charity or philanthropic work or community work behind the scenes, and people don't know about it. Everyone in the UK is going to know who Idris Elba is. Do they know that he founded the Elba Hope Foundation? No, they probably don't. Do they know what that work that foundation is doing? They probably don't. So I think, unfortunately, it's not necessarily that, you know, celebrities are only awarded for their broadcasting or their media coverage. They tend to be doing a great deal behind the scenes. And actually, I think there's always room for celebrity in the honours list, because actually, again, it's a very old tradition. It's, you know, it's cultured, it's steeped in history for the UK, but again, it keeps it relevant. It keeps it in the mouths of people, younger individuals that wouldn't necessarily know that the honours system exists. It keeps it alive, I think.
What do you think, though, about MPs and politicians and civil servants being given these honours? Because a lot of it does smack of cronyism. You know, there's a little bit of, you scratch my back, I'll give you an honour. You know, there's things like that again, kind of, I think it sort of degrades everybody else that's got one for really stepping outside their comfort zone and really doing something for their community.
It's a tricky one, but I think, to be honest, I mean, that the number of MPs and politicians that receive them, thankfully, is actually minuscule compared to the rest of the list. I mean, you've got just over 1,000 people named this year, and 95% of them are, you know, ordinary, extraordinary people. I think, you know, they keep that list small for a reason, and they ensure that, you know, the majority of the slots available to those that are honours worthy are ordinary, extraordinary people.
Is there a limit to the number of awards, or can they just give thousands and thousands out if they wanted to?
No, they don't do that. I mean, we tend to see it jump anywhere between 1,000 and 1,400 at maximum, but there are 2 ceremonies a year, of course. There are also the birthday honours in the summer, so total you're looking at around 2,500 every year.
Do you think the system needs to be changed or updated? I was talking to Michael Crick a moment ago. He said, look, if you don't like who's on the honour list, then put somebody forward. But it seems to be quite an arduous job to try and lobby for somebody you think is worthy.
I mean, I don't think the process in itself is arduous, and hopefully there doesn't need to be a great deal of lobbying. I mean, what you're asked to do is complete the nomination form, setting out why that individual has made a difference, you know, their merits, their achievements, what services they're providing to their country and their community, as well as a number of supporting letters. And from there, you submit it to the Honours Secretariat, and the committees take care of it from there. You're simply awaiting your decision. Now, whether or not the honours system requires updating, it's very possible. As I said, it's been around for over 100 years. You know, times have changed, society's changed. But, you know, actually, I think the beauty of the honours system is that what people hold dear hasn't changed. And as I mentioned, you know, some of the stories that we see come out, some of the people that are named on the list, you know, they're just doing everyday things, and they are being honoured for it. You know, there's plenty of room there. And we actually recently did some research at Awards Intelligence, and it told us that only 27% of people in the UK even knew how to nominate somebody for an honour. So, you know, I'm always actively saying to people, if you know somebody that's honours worthy, just get the nomination in. You know, do that yourself. Come to us. We can help you with it, guide you through it. But you do have to be in it to win it. And again, keeping applying keeps it alive, and it keeps the right people on the list.
Yeah, I guess so. And it is good to see ordinary people being awarded. Do they all get to go and collect it, or do some have to get it through the post?
No, they do. So what happens is when they're if they're successful in their nomination, and the honours committees decide that they are worthy of an honour, they'll receive a letter from the Cabinet Office that will land on their doorstep that will tell them you've been nominated for an honour and been successful, and they invite you to accept your honour. Oh. And that will come via an investiture ceremony. So those will be held over the course of the year, where you will be sent your time and your location. So you'll be invited to one of the royal residences, and you will be bestowed your medal by a member of the royal family.
I'll keep the year free. I'll keep it.
That's right,
I'll keep it clear. Let's both do that, Claire, because you never know. You never ever know.
That's right.
It's great to talk to you. Have a wonderful new year. Thank you very much indeed, Claire James. There, awards and honours expert advisor. Hello there, and a very good afternoon to you. It's Petrie here with you until 4 o'clock, and we are discussing, you and I, what it is to be British. Do you have to be born in Britain to be considered British? Do you need to have British ancestry to be considered British? Well, it's never really been a thing, but the number of people who believe now that Britishness is something you are born with has almost doubled in 2 years. That's according to research that warns of an increase in what's being called ethno-nationalism in Britain, although a majority of the public still believe that being British is rooted in shared values. A growing proportion see it as a product of ethnicity, birthplace and ancestry, according to analysis carried out by the Institute of Public Policy Research. 1 in 3 people thought a person must be born in Britain to be truly British. That's up from 1 in 5 in just 2023. 71% saying that having British ancestry is a prerequisite of being truly British, and 59% saying they believed the nation was an ethnic, not a civic community. So, do you believe you have to be born in Britain to be British? Or can you tell me what being British is? And if you are not somebody who was born in Britain, when did you start to feel British? And what was it that made you feel British? I mean, I guess a lot of people would say acceptance, right? That would be, for me, I think, when I would feel like I was part of society, of British society, once I was accepted into that society. But I'd love to hear from you as to what Britishness is, and whether you think anybody can be British who isn't born here. Message here says, I am English because my parents are, but if I was born in another country, I would still be English. Being British is the word collectively used for the whole of the UK, the Scottish, Irish, Welsh and English. I'm English, but I feel ashamed now with what's happening. And that's from Penny in Essex. This one says, my son was born whilst I was living in Denmark, but he's as British as fish and chips. It's about shared values and a shared culture, and that's from Brad in Cambridge. Yes, my son was accidentally born in Germany, but he's British. Well, he takes on the citizenship of his mother, so that's British. But he's British. So if you have to be born here, that would mean that he isn't, in your view, British, which would be an interesting one to argue. So give me a call. That'd be lovely. Let's go to the calls now, and I'll speak to Grace, who's in Ealing. If I get the fader, there we go. Hello, Grace.
Hi, and
Hi.
Merry Christmas, Twixmas, whatever you want to call it at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, and to you.
It's still the 12 days of Christmas, so I think we can still say Merry Christmas.
Okay. I'll just say Twixmas or Season's Greeting or whatever. But anyway.
I'm slightly confused by this article because it says that the number of people who consider Britishness something you're born with have almost doubled in a report that warns of the rising tide of ethno-nationalism. But that's putting two different things together in itself, since where you're born isn't to do necessarily with your ethnicity. So I do think...
That's a very good point, actually, yeah.
I do think that ethno-nationalism is on the rise and is deeply concerning. But if someone says that you're British because you're born in Britain, I wouldn't presume that that meant they were referring to ethnicity.
No, I mean, I'm with you with the ethno-nationalism, that would be you saying that only white people can be truly British. Right?
Yeah, if someone were to say that, that would be ethno-nationalism and that would be concerning.
But I think a lot of people do think that.
Yeah, that is deeply worrying, and I am seeing more of that, and that's disturbing. But in my mind, British is an adjective referring to something that is of Britain. So I don't think that the idea of someone being born in Britain is a way to define British is completely mad. Although I think that it might make more sense to say someone who's spent the majority of their life, particularly their childhood in Britain, might be the best definition for British, because people do move around. It's a nebulous thing. You can't really define it very clearly because people move around. But ultimately, I don't think it really matters whether or not a person is British. We're all human beings, and it is our personal values and our actions that matter more than our nationality.
But what is it to be British? I mean, everything you've said so far, I completely agree with you. But when people say I'm British and I'm proud to be British, what does that actually mean? To what are they referring?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, because I've been wondering about this for ages. I think you can have a feeling of sentimental attachment, which is not a bad thing. I think about sometimes, if I'm looking at lots of American media, then I sometimes think to myself, I don't know, I have an attachment to what's familiar to me instead, like calling football and not misspeaking the English language like Americans do. Sorry, that's very unfair. And the way that we debate our favourite chocolate bars on Twitter and things like that.
Our sense of humour, definitely. Our sense of sarcasm, definitely.
There's a kind of a sentimental attachment, but pride often refers to something that one has achieved. We've not achieved anything by being British. I mean, some people talk about this being a Christian country, and that has shaped the values that we have in common. But Jesus says, he said, produce fruit then in keeping with repentance, and do not presume to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. So Jesus is kind of telling people off if they're really proud of their ancestry. He's saying that your ancestry isn't really what matters. And I think that what matters more than whether or not a person is British is
Was it Oscar Wilde that said to be born British is to win the lottery of life?
Oh, I don't know enough about my literature quotes, so that's good. I think we should recognise, that's a really great quote to recognise that we're really fortunate to be British.
Yeah.
A lot of people in our world could only dream of having the standards of living that we have, even with services getting worse than they were, even with the cost of living crisis. A lot of people don't have the privilege of being born with the amenities and opportunities that we all have. So
and the freedoms, which are the most important thing that we are in danger of losing if we don't keep an eye on them.
We're so privileged in many ways, and I think it'd be good to recognise that, and also to recognise that all human beings are equally valuable, irrespective of their nationality. But I also wouldn't say that nationality and ethnicity are the same thing. And if people are going to say that a person can only be British if they've got British ancestry that goes back generations and generations, or that they're only British if they're white, that is concerning, and we are seeing more of that. I'm not sure the best way to address that.
Yeah, I do think that's a very good point. But I also think that perhaps when people answered this question, that they meant more the ethnicity, I suspect, than just the place at which you're born. Because like I said, my son was born in Germany. It doesn't make him German. But good to talk to you, Grace. What are you doing for New Year? Anything exciting?
Probably not. No, I'm an incredibly boring person. I don't go to parties, so I'll probably just be watching the fireworks on TV.
Do you know what? The trouble with parties is that people are there. It's far too peoply for me. Far too peoply. Great to talk to you, Grace. We'll definitely talk to each other in the new year as well. Sam has said to be British is a feeling. You know if you are. You have pride to be British, not necessarily proud of humanity or government. It's individual and internal. Yeah, but it's kind of, we can't say what it is really, can we? It's very strange. On Britishness, Ian says, I'm born and raised Canadian. I'm also British. I immigrated to Scotland 2 years ago. I hold my British passport. I went through British citizenship ceremony, took an oath to the same monarch I'd known my whole life, of course with Canada. I own a very Scottish business. Tartan or whiskey? That's what I'm going to say. I'm allowed to say that, by the way, because I am half Scottish. And contribute to my community. My citizenship came via my Scottish mother, and I'm more than happy to identify as Canadian and British, though I have faced stigma and discrimination from people telling me I'm not British. They can take a long walk off a short pier. Ian in Scotland. Yeah, what I don't know. I just don't know what it is that people I don't either. I like being British, but I don't really know what I mean by that. This one says, it's no wonder this day and age we're pondering on what Britishness is. The original concept of fair play, good manners and loyalty have been lost to the altar of self and materialism, plus scorn of our flag and history. And that's from Amanda. Yeah, I do agree with that as well. I think we are a bit more selfish now. Maybe that is something we ought to think about if we want to be truly, truly British. Right, coming up, we have so much more for you. We're going to be looking at people are turning to prostitution.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the
and a very good afternoon. It is Petrie Hosken here with you until 4 o'clock. We've been talking today about what it is to be British, because a new report has come out suggesting that people now believe, in larger numbers than before, that you have to be born in Britain or have British ancestry to be British. So I'm asking you about that and whether you actually believe that to be true. Do you think that you have to have been born in Britain to be truly British? And while we're at it, what is it to be British? Because I'm quite chuffed that I'm British, but I'm not entirely sure why. I'd pretty much rather be British than anything else in the world. But again, if you ask me to nail that to the wall and tell you why, I'm not sure I could tell you. And that I just wonder what it is that I'm so chuffed about. So if you can help me out, that would be great. Give us a call on what it is to be British, and do you believe that actually you have to have been born here to be British? 0344 499 1000. For those of you who are not looking at the screen right now, I need to tell you that calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back. So it's not really a burden, no excuse. You can text me as well, as many of you are doing this afternoon, and put the word talk up front, and then your message to 87222, and that comes to this studio. So I look forward to either being your voice or hearing your voice, so do get in touch on that. We're also talking about the honours system, because the New Year's honours list came out late last night. So we're discussing that today. And do you think it's still fit for purpose? Do you think that the right people are being honoured? And I've got a message here from Penny, who said, what about that wonderful friend of Rob Burrows? And that's Kevin. I'm trying to remember his surname. Anyway, he was the one that carried him around. He's raised £11 million for charities. He carried Rob Burrows around. He's already got awards. I think he's got the OBE, MBE and CBE, but a lot of people wanted him to be knighted for that. I think that he should be knighted, because everybody, as you said, should. Kevin Sinfield, yes, I do apologise, I've got it written down right in front of me. Kevin Sinfield, he already has the MBE, OBE and CBE, but everybody thought that he was a contender for the knighthood, and I completely support that. So Penny, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, the cost of living crisis in this country has probably got us all a little bit worried, a little bit concerned. You get less for your money. Bills only ever go one way. We've got the council tax going to go up. I know that my parking permit's gone up, car insurance, everything only goes up. So what do people do who can't supplement their income by having a second or third regular job? What if the only thing they can do to supplement that income is to turn to sex work? And there is such an enormous increase now in women, particularly turning to sex work, that many people in the business or in the industry of sex work are saying, look, we need to offer safer spaces, we need to offer street workers more protection, because this is what is happening now. Whenever there is a dip in the economy, women have always turned to the oldest profession, always, because that is something that they are able to do. And in many cases, they are able to fit it around a family, around children. And also, I refuse to ever call sex workers girls, because that infantilizes them. It's one thing that really actually annoys me. They are not girls, they are women. For some of them, it is a choice. And for others, it is a choice out of necessity. And it's something that works for them. So they are amongst the most vulnerable women in an industry where experiences can vary dramatically. So let's discuss this further. Nikki Adams joins me now, who's a spokeswoman of the English Collective of Prostitutes. Nikki, a very good afternoon to you. Are you surprised by these latest numbers, Nikki, looking at the amount of women, particularly, who are now turning to sex work?
No, not at all, actually. And in fact, I fear that it's going to become even worse over the next, few months, maybe the next year, because we're looking at some of the changes that have been proposed by the government. I mean, one of the ones that I'm particularly concerned about is they're talking about cutting support for women asylum seekers. And, there's a lot of women asylum seekers in our organisation who are already living on below poverty line and income, and this is just going to make it much, much worse. I mean, women themselves, particularly mothers, are saying, look, what else can we do? You know, we're not going to sit back and see our children go without food, go without shoes, go without clothes. And if that's what we have to do, then that's what we're going to have to do. And it really does put the responsibility at the door of the government to address that kind of rising poverty, rising homelessness, rising debt that is pushing so many women, particularly mothers, into sex work. I mean, women have looked at the other jobs that are available and they just don't pay enough. They don't pay enough to cover childcare. You know, most people can't live. You know, people are already doing 2 jobs and they can't live on the money. And I think it's going to, you know, some of the organizations that are working with women based on the street, you know, we have a lot of women who are street workers in our collective, and they are particularly hard hit. Benefit sanctions have been absolutely disastrous because they really cut your benefits. Your benefits are only just about enough to survive on, and then they go and cut them even further. And so I think people are in crisis, and I think the crisis is going to get worse.
A lot of people, though, will look at sex workers, particularly prostitutes, okay, as choosing the easy option, that just their life on their back, they can make a lot of money, they're probably low-grade individuals anyway. And we see that, don't we, when there are attacks on prostitutes, people go, oh, it was a prostitute. That's okay then, almost. What do you say to those? Because I think, for me, it feels a bit like homelessness, that you know, a lot of people are only a couple of steps away from having to make that decision themselves.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. But I also think that public opinion has changed massively. I mean, right back in the time of 2006, when those Ipswich murders happened, which tragically killed so many women, so many young women in particular, we didn't find that the public was judgmental.
Hello, Nikki, have we still got you? I think we've lost Nikki. I knew we were on a dodgy line anyway. But listen, I'm going to take a very quick break here, and then we're going to come back and talk to Emma Hartley, who's a campaigner of the Women's Rights Network. So we're going to continue with this conversation, but we'll be back in just a moment. Hello, good afternoon to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you. And we're talking about a report that has come out about the number of, particularly women, I know men do it as well, but particularly women, the number of women who are turning to sex work to make ends meet. This always happens in a cost of living crisis. It's the oldest known profession. Just to give you some of the background of this, there's a charity which is called 125, works with women who have turned to sex work, and sex work can be prostitution, stripping, lap dancing, performing in adult films, phone or internet performances, or any other services, sexual services in return for money, goods, or other agreed terms. Now, the exchange of those services for money is legal in the UK, apart from in Northern Ireland. But soliciting, that's trying to get clients on the streets, is illegal. Paying for the service of a sex worker who's forced or threatened or trafficked into it. Owning or managing a brothel, that's any premises where more than one person is working as a sex worker. And controlling those women for their money is also illegal. And advertising, including putting cards in phone boxes, is also an illegal act. But there has been a dramatic increase, and this charity 125 has said they have seen a 76% increase in demand for their charitable services. A year ago we had about 180 online sex ads for Merseyside at any one time, they said. Today it's 1,400. A flow of women into the industry has added greater urgency to the debate on the laws and protections surrounding that sort of work. So, the cost of living crisis, as we just heard from Nikki Adams there, she's saying this is going to get worse. More and more women are going to be turning to this kind of work in order to make ends meet. Well, joining me now is Emma Hartley, who's a campaigner in the Women's Rights Network. Good to speak to you, Emma. This is the oldest profession, isn't it? This is something that women particularly have had to rely on through history for as long as we can look back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, I think we're using the wrong language. I don't think this is sex work. I think this is prostitution. I think calling it work actually legitimizes it in a way. It glamorizes it. It makes it sound like it's a desirable job, a normal job, something you can do safely and have any rights to do it. I think we need to call this what it is. It's a form of violence against women. Prostitution, buying sexual access to a human being is a form of male violence, and by continuing to repeat this narrative, I think is wrong.
I'm not sure I agree. I've had many conversations with sex workers over my career, and a lot of the women that I speak to do not view it as violence against them. They have chosen, and I not all the women I've spoken to, but I've spoken to very many of them, who will say, we're fed up with being patronised and infantilised. This is something I have chosen to do. It pays more than getting a second job stacking shelves. I have chosen to do this, and furthermore, I enjoy doing it. So it's not all sex workers.
That doesn't correlate though with this story, which is saying that women are going into this because they feel like they have no other choice, because our benefit system doesn't work, because the government aren't doing enough. That's the narrative that we're being given here. But actually, the reality of women that enter this industry actually are they maybe have no other, as you say, they're sort of more marginalised. They don't have access to other resources. They're actually oppressed in ways that we're sort of not covering. So when you say that they have a choice, actually this whole charity is there to support the women to escape the violence, to make sure they're supported. Well, who is actually able to make that a safe choice for them to take? I don't think that actually follows, because actually what this story is saying is that the government aren't doing enough because these women have no other choice.
Yeah,
and they have to go
I
into
agree
this
that
industry.
there are women who are trafficked, and there are women who feel they have no other choice but to do this. But that is not all sex workers, and there are sex workers that I've spoken to, and I will continue to use that phrase, because I don't believe that every single sex worker is there because they're being victimised and maltreated. A lot of the sex workers, they say it's completely misunderstood. I agree with you that in terms of this report, they are talking about women who have, they feel they have no other choice, except that they're saying that they get better paid if they choose this kind of work as opposed to other kinds of work.
I think that's where we have a problem here, in that actually, prostitution is to do with there being a high demand to access to women's bodies. I mean, we can disagree on what word you want to use to call it that, but at the end of the day, the safest place for women is out of prostitution. It's out of this industry, because the reality is that, when we're trying to tackle violence against women, we know that in that industry, it's an extremely violent place for women to be. There's no safe way to be a put in inverted commas, sex worker. And actually, if we're concerned about ending violence against women, we need to look at why why are all these women able to enter this industry? Is it to do with the economic circumstances of the country, or is it actually because there's now really high demand? Because now actually women are able to sort of sell themselves in order for men, the men who are the ones that want to pay for sex, they're the ones that want this. And should we not actually be looking at why there's high demand, and also look at the patterns of, as you say, you talk about trafficking. Trafficking is a massive problem, and yet whilst our laws are as they are, it's going to continue to become a bigger problem. And we know that it's happening, and often the women that suffer the most from this are, yes, the women that it's happening underground. In terms of the women that are able to talk about it, you have your glamorized Lily Phillips, for example. That's not the reality for the women who are in the most severe economic circumstances. They have all sorts of complex things going on. For them, those are the ones that we should be concerned about, I think.
I completely agree with you, and I do think there's a lot of women who are turning to sex work because they have other issues, that they have issues that might prevent them from working in other forms of jobs, such as mental health problems or addiction issues. And we know in this country, Emma, that those things are not dealt with quickly enough. They're not dealt with properly enough. If you have a mental health issue, you're often waiting a year for any kind of talking therapy, or if you've got an addiction, you're not seen as a victim of something. You're seen as a perpetrator or even a criminal.
Absolutely, but it's the view that I personally hold, is that actually it should not be an option. Buying sex, or having somebody buy sex from, or having sexual access to a human being, is itself a form of male violence. And actually, if we really care about protecting those women, helping them solve all of those other problems, we need to seriously look at the industry as a whole. Look at who's making all the money out of this, because it actually is not necessarily the women who were sort of, the narrative here is that they're empowered, this is a choice, this is something they can do. I totally reject that and say that actually this is a really, really problematic industry, and we need to be looking at the law not in the way that the article that you talk about suggests, which is decriminalising it as a whole. We need to be actually looking at where the demand is.
But do you think we should go the other way and make it a criminal act to buy a prostitute?
I do. I think we need to be looking at what the Nordic countries are doing, and we need to look at what Ash Reagan is proposing in Scotland. We need to take the focus off the women and actually put it onto the buyers, and actually look at it in that way. Because if we want to call it work, then actually, we need to start looking at things like consent. If you want to exit work or have a relationship with your employer, there's all sorts of things that protect you there that are not the same in this industry.
And do you think that people who are on OnlyFans sites and things like that fall into this category as well?
I think it's all part of the same industry. It's all part of the demand to access women's bodies, essentially. And until we have equality, which until we address the things that oppress women structurally, then I don't think we're going to resolve any of those things.
Well, what would you say to people, Emma, who would say, look, because there are prostitutes, because there are sex workers, there is less ad hoc violence towards women, because these men that are demanding to pay for these interactions are somehow being satisfied by, I'm choosing my words carefully because we've got probably kids listening, but they're choosing these women instead of perpetrating violence against a stranger.
Well, I just don't think that's true in terms of you can never guarantee there will not be violence in this industry. Actually,
but is it possible? Is it possible that we're seeing that the demand increase, which is actually taking away some of the worries for people who don't work in the sex industry? Not that they should ever have to tolerate that, but that is always an argument that I hear.
I don't think that's true. I think that the fact that the notion of us being able to regulate it, it's out in the open, I don't think that actually addresses any of the underlying issues here. The issues that it's exploitative of women's bodies, that even if they have an interaction that's not violent, actually with that we're still failing to look at the ethical and moral implications of all of that, and actually the power imbalance there, because actually there might not be any violence there, but where's the women's consent in that interaction? The power imbalance, there's physical
the consent is in them standing on the street and saying, I'll do that, whatever you want for 50 quid. That's the consent, isn't it?
But where can they withdraw their consent at any point in that interaction? If they're selling it, do they have that's the whole point there, really. That actually it's just further enforcing inequality and actually there's no safe way to do prostitution. It's ultimately at the end of the day the person that suffers the most in that interaction is the woman. Although, as you might argue, they might have a financial benefit from that, but it's looking at it more holistically that I think it's really problematic.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Emma Hartley there, campaigner for the Women's Rights Network. Right, I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back I shall read some of your messages, because you said so many to me. So we'll be back in a sec. Good afternoon, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and we've been talking about what it is to be British. 1 in 3 now believe that Britishness is dependent on being born in the UK. Debs rang about what it is to be British, so let's have a listen to her voice note now.
Hi Petrie, Merry Christmas to you, and I hope you have a wonderful New Year. It's really nice to actually see you in the daytime. Anyway, I think being British is got to be your heritage, as in, your family are from Britain or you were born here. But if you take my brother-in-law into account, who was born in Rintel in Germany, because both my in-laws were serving in Germany, but he wasn't born in BFG, which is British Forces Germany. He was actually born in a hospital that was civilian, but he is British, and I think that's what we need to take into account. I could be wrong. As my father always says, it's my opinion, not to be confused with those of others. Anyway, keep up the great work, and like I say, great to see you in the daytime. Take care.
Bless you. What a lovely message. Yeah, Debs, I know Rintel really well, actually. When you mentioned, I was like, oh, my goodness. And not born in BFG. Yeah, my son was born, really accidentally born. He came massively early, which is the first and last time he's ever done that. He's always late. But he was 5.5 weeks early. So he was born in a civilian hospital. In fact, my makeup artist, it's a long story, I won't go into it now, but my makeup artist took me to a holistic hospital. Yeah, because I was out there working on a TV show, and I stayed the night with her, and she took me to this hippie hospital, which was not what I wanted at all. But anyway, he was safely born there. Does that make him not British? I don't know. It is a really, really difficult one. I like this message as well. It says, Nick has said, you've messed up my body clock. I usually go to sleep listening to you. Is that a compliment? I'm not quite sure. He means that I'm doing hopefully he means I do a late night show normally, and not that I'm incredibly dull. He says, being British, I think one of the essential qualities of us is patience. It's where queuing and the general unruffled spirit, dignity and calmness of the British springs from. It's almost the opposite of what marks out a foreigner. Excitable, loud, arm-waving and impatient. And that is just my pennies worth, he says. That's Nick from Who in Kent. And this one says, hi Petrie, great show. You're very attractive, so I guess you're a Petrie dish. Have a great new year, from John in Blackpool. Thank you, John. Yeah, my nickname was Dishy at school. Not because I was, but because of the dish that you grow diseases in, I think. But anyway, thank you very much indeed for the compliment. We're going to continue with the conversation about what it is to be British. Do you have to have been born in Britain to be British? And if not, what is it that makes us British? What are we proud of? What do we think is Britishness that we're so pleased about? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. In the meantime, we are looking at Donald Trump again, not this time in connection with Ukraine but and Russia. But he said that he's not worried about China exercising militarily around Taiwan. The drills began on Monday, and the Chinese military say they are meant to be a warning against Taiwan's independence and separatist forces and external interference. In fact, they have warned everybody else to keep their noses out. Now, it's expected that China will be militarily ready by 2027. But militarily ready for what? Will that be a land invasion on Taiwan? It is constitutionally and imperative in China. It's written into their constitution that Taiwan must be reclaimed by China. So is that, while we're looking at Russia and Ukraine, what else is going on that we should really be paying attention to, because any war down there would destabilise the entire globe? Well, joining me to discuss that is Colonel Simon Diggins, OBE, retired British Army Colonel and Defence Analyst. Colonel, season's greetings to you.
Petrie, happy Christmas to you as well.
Look, we are looking in the other direction, but this threatening behaviour from China has been going on actually for a few years now.
No, it has. I mean, I think this is the second largest exercise since the 2022, and 2022 is when the Speaker of the House, Pelosi, visited Taiwan. And the significance of her is not that she's the Speaker of the House like our own Speaker, but effectively she's the third most important person in the United States in the event of either the President or the Vice President not being there. So it was a very high-level profile.
And that upset the Chinese quite a lot, didn't it?
Enormously. And since then, there's been this continual build-up of exercises where they've exercised various parts of their military, their air force, their navy, their marines. They've flown missiles, etc. And what they've started to do in the last year or so is start to put the whole thing together in what they call combined arms and joint operations, which are very complicated and need all that coordination. This is the second largest since that exercise, and is very sophisticated. It's got all of those weapon systems being employed, missiles being fired into sea, and this time they've got bolder. They've got really close into the Taiwanese mainland. In some cases, their notified exercise areas actually cross into Taiwanese territorial water. They've had many aircraft. I think 2/3 of the 130 aircraft they've employed have actually crossed the meridian line, which takes them into Taiwan's air defense identification zone area. So this is a major exercise, and they're very angry. I mean, Donald Trump has just basically provided the Taiwanese with an $11 billion arms aid package, which is more arms than the whole of the Biden administration passed to them. So they see this as a direct provocation. And yet, as you rightly identified at the beginning, Trump said he's not worried by these drills. I mean, I think the expectation that China would react was built into the calculation about providing the arms.
Because any protection of Taiwan from the US has always been extremely woolly, hasn't it? They did have a fleet down there in the sea, and Biden was always like, well, look, we'll be here, but we're not sure how much we want to get involved in that. But by Trump selling that amount of weaponry to Taiwan, that doesn't mean he's taking sides, does it? That just means he saw an opportunity to make some money.
Yes, you're right. The US position is interesting, very, very ambiguous. They're on the one hand, and they've got this is a standard statement, that they will not provide statements of what they regard as legitimate sovereignty, where there are sort of sovereignty disputes, which also we've seen, of course, in Ukraine as well. That's why the argument about sovereignty and territoriality is meaningless to them, because they won't take a view on that particular thing. And they've done the same thing in Taiwan, and Taiwan is an ambiguous situation to be in. There's no doubt about it. When it effectively split off from mainland China in the 1940s, both sides, both the communist Chinese and Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists, both assumed that Taiwan was just a normal part of the mainland of China. It's only subsequently that Taiwan's got this independent existence from about 1970 onwards as the Republic of China as a separate entity. But even that's not recognised by everybody. We don't have an embassy in Taipei, in the capital. We have a consulate. And that shows you the level of our engagement with them, recognising its importance. And the consulate apparently is one of the largest in the world, but it's nonetheless a consulate and not an embassy. So the embassy is in Beijing. And that's the way a lot of countries actually play it from there. What the Americans have said is they don't want any change in Taiwan's status to be achieved by force, but they're not, I think, prepared at the moment to give an absolute guarantee on defending Taiwan in the event of the Chinese invading them.
The interesting thing about China and America is, again, Donald Trump's having to play a certain diplomatic game with Xi, but at the same time, I don't think there's ever been as much military, American military, surrounding China as there is today. Would I be right in that?
They see them as, and we use very similar phrases in the UK, we see them as a strategic competitor. But for the US, China is the strategic competitor.
Yeah.
They see issues like, for example, in the Middle East or in Russia or Ukraine as regional problems. But for them, the only strategic competitor they've got is the Chinese. And they see this in the growth of the Chinese Navy.
And they've been building bases, they've been taking islands. I mean, they are literally, if you look at a map and you see the US military, they wouldn't accept that from China, but they're almost completely surrounding the landmass on the sea.
And that's what they're both trying to do, and China is also pushing outwards from there as well. I mean, China established its base in Djibouti, in Gwalior, a port in Pakistan. They're developing a joint military and civilian facility there. They established relationships with the Mauritians, which is one of the sort of horror stories that goes with the sale of the Chagos Islands that effectively enable the Chinese to have more of a stake than they had before. And you may recall a year or so ago, they did the same in some of the Pacific Islands until the Australians jumped in and said, whatever the Chinese give you, we'll give you the same. Basically, keep the Chinese out. So the Chinese are in an expansionist mode. They've got this aggressive sales policy, the hub and spoke, the new Silk Road policy, pushing out in different countries and trying to develop a trade links with those. And with that, they think they need the military strength and power to go with it. It has to be said, exactly the same as the British did when we established our own seaborne empire. Unusual for the China, though, because until relatively recently, people thought of it as a power at all. They saw it as a land power and not as a sea power. So this is a big change for them. But Taiwan is right at the centre of that. It's a central pivot point in the so-called inner island chain that sits off the coast of East Asia. And to retake that would give them easy access out into the Pacific and easy access in terms of control, both to the north and to the south from there. So it is a key asset. It's not just a bit of territory they need to take back. It's a key strategic asset, and they want to take control of it. And as you rightly pointed out in your briefing at the beginning, President Xi has told his armed forces they need to be ready to take Taiwan by 2027.
And of course we know that would be incredibly destabilising. The Japanese are worried about it. The Australians are worried about it. In fact, I believe the Americans are building up trying to build up more of a base in Australia too. So this would be incredibly destabilising. But I cannot see which side Trump would come down on, because as much as he's not a fan of China, would he leap to the defence of Taiwan?
I think he probably wouldn't. I think he's prepared to let the Taiwanese develop all the defences they need to avoid this forcible takeover. But I can't actually imagine him at the moment committing US forces and bringing in other allies to helping to resist against them. The Japanese might. The Japanese have said that a forcible takeover of Taiwan would regard as a sort of life or death existential issue. Yeah. So they might well resist. And you rightly point out the Australian interest in not having the Pacific turned into a Chinese lake. Hence, of course, not just the American bases in northern territories, but also the Australia, UK, US pact over the building of nuclear submarines, which is also ongoing at the moment. So we're in a state of flux, and that flux is dangerous, and it's an unstable position for people to be in. My personal view is that if President Xi gives the order for his armed forces to take Taiwan, then what we'll see first is an exaggerated version of what we've just seen. In other words, this attempted blockade. So he'll basically make life in Taiwan untenable in terms of its normal connections. I mean, just the disruption caused by this 130 aircraft, but effectively caused the cancellation of thousands of flights in and out of Taiwan. And two of the sea blockades were right off the major ports of Taiwan as well. Now, they kept themselves out of the immediate distance, but my expectation is they'd move them right in to actually make trade in and out, movement in and out of the island untenable, basically. And so I think that's what they'd do first. I think physically attacking Taiwan, even though they practice that, would be another major step and be extraordinarily bloody and a very dangerous war as well. So I think if they can try and, first of all, classic Sun Tzu, if you can achieve victory without fighting, that is the ultimate success. That's a classic Chinese dictum.
And the art of war.
It's straight from the art of war, absolutely correct. And if they can achieve that, that'd be fine. The next stage would be go to some form of blockade, and I think direct attack would be very much a third, and not a third, a least popular option in terms of what they might be trying to achieve.
And of course, we can't talk about this region without seriously considering North Korea and what impact an attack on, if there were to be a physical attack on Taiwan, would have on Kim and what he wants to do.
Yeah,
because these leaders are giving each other permission to behave in a way that wasn't acceptable or hasn't been acceptable for 80 years, right? And if one of them does it, they'll go, well, we can do it now.
We can do it as well, absolutely. I think North Korea's ambition is to stay alive. I mean, I think it's kind of survival, and they worked out long ago the only way to avoid being invaded by the Americans is to have nuclear weapons, and I think that's kind of what they've done. They don't have direct territorial ambitions. I can't imagine they're trying to attack South Korea, though they might be stupid enough to try and do that. I think North Korea is its ultimate guarantor is China. But I think North Korea is a bit of an embarrassment to China as well, because the leadership there, Kim Jong, is so unreliable, he's so unpredictable, that you're not quite sure what he's going to go and do next. I have not the slightest doubt that if there was a major conflict over Taiwan, he would use it to try and take advantage in some particular way. I think he would have a very different reaction to I think the rather cautious, probably matching force reaction to a Chinese attack. I think he would probably be slapped down pretty hard, pretty quickly. But of course, that's incredibly dangerous. He has nuclear weapons, and he's been testing nuclear weapons, and he has ambitions to have ICBMs, in other words, missiles that can fly all the way from North Korea into America itself. So he's a very dangerous, destabilizing factor in there. But interestingly, I think both sides would be looking to see which way he would jump, because I don't think he's not exactly a reliable ally for the Chinese either. I think they find him, frankly, a bit of an embarrassment, but they are nonetheless the kind of they're the sort of permanent guarantors of North Korea's existence.
Yeah, just the idea of a very unstable man in a very unstable world doesn't make
it's a happy thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't make for sleeping well at night.
It doesn't.
Simon, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you have a wonderful New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Colonel Simon Diggins, OBE, who is a defence analyst and retired from the British military. Right, a quick break, and I'll be back in just a moment. Hello, good afternoon. It is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 4 o'clock. And we've been talking about what it is to be a British. But let me just tell you what's coming up at the top of the hour. We've got a journalist. He is a broadcaster, former BBC senior correspondent and author, and he's going to be telling us what his stories of the year are from his point of view, what the big stories of the year are from his point of view. And in the interest of being open and honest, he's also my big brother. it's Andrew Hosken, will be here, but he's got the credentials, right? I mean, don't tell him I told you. But yeah, he was quite successful. Andrew Hosken will be joining us at the top of the hour. Now, though, we're talking about Britishness. Let's hear from Stephen, who's left a voice note on Britishness.
Petrie, Stephen in Newcastle here. Great subject, great show. Being British, for me, I don't think anybody is classed, well, to myself, nobody's British, unless I would say 3 generations of British grandparents. Then you may be fully British. Thank you. Ta-da.
Do you know how much I love that accent? I wish I could do it, but I love that accent. Stephen, thank you. So Stephen's saying, no, you've got to go back generationally to be British. But I just wonder what British is. Let's talk to Andrew, not my brother, but this is another Andrew, here in London. Andrew, a very good afternoon.
Oh, hello, Petrie. Enjoying your show.
Thank you.
I've got a few lines from a poem I wrote about being British. I did actually broadcast it on your radio station about 25 years ago, but things haven't really changed. So if you'd like to hear them.
Yes, go on. I'd love to.
It's stiff upper lip, the English reserve, and passing the port to the left. It's Stilton cheese and Tiptree preserve and a washing powder called Dreft. It's so many things and nothing at all. It's Shakespeare, Lear and Blyton. It's 3 railway cuttings and Dotheboys Hall and a pink rock from Brighton. It's cucumber sandwiches on the Isle of Wight and pickled onions with fish and chips. It's jokes about cows and all right on the night, and it's down to the sea in ships. It's about kindness and honour and British resolve and striving to be best at things. It's good sportsmanship, not doing things by halves and letting out others at junctions. And after a fashion, it works, all shipshape and Bristol fashion. It's what being British is all about. For Britons go about their lives with a passion, because being British is something to shout about.
I love that. It's about everything and nothing at all. I absolutely love that. And do you know what I did? I achieved this Christmas is I taught my nephew about drinking port and eating Stilton.
Oh.
That's how good an auntie I am. So that is a lovely poem. I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's why it's so difficult to put your finger on what it is to be British, because it's all of those little things that add up, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
Andrew, that was wonderful. Thank you. Can you send me a copy of that? I really enjoyed that.
Okay, will do.
I'd love to have that. Thank you very much indeed. That for me just does sum it up, doesn't it? It's all those little things that add up to what being British is. But what do you think being British is? Joel has called from Peterborough. Good afternoon, Joel.
Good afternoon, Petrie. My idea of being British, I'm born in Ireland. My grandparents were under the British.
Okay.
So I came to England when I was 16. And I've lived in England all that time. I've travelled abroad, I've worked in other countries, and I'm now in my 80s.
God, you haven't lost your accent, have you?
No, I never lost mine.
No.
But to me, being British is taking on exactly what I left Ireland. There are similarities, but there are great differences. And I assimilated here, and when I say assimilated, I had the English language, so it meant I was able to live in. Britain used to be Britain. It's not anymore. When you allow an ethnic group, it doesn't matter what country they come from, who they are, or what they are. Britain divided the state. It took religion out of politics. It's now going back in.
Yeah, I think religion has got no place in politics at all.
Yes, but it has today.
Shouldn't it?
Look who's taking over in this country. And it is in politics, whether we like it or not. The Muslims here, we're assimilating to them now instead of them assimilating to be British.
Do you really believe that? Because the numbers are you know, in comparison to white British people, anybody else is in quite small numbers. Why do you think that they have such power?
We've sold out. Keir Starmer sold out. Even the King. The DF should be taken off the coin, which is Defence Defender, Defender of the Faith, Fide Defensor. It should be taken off. He supports all religions. It's supposed to be in England. I'm a Catholic, but I don't practice. It's supposed to be Church of England. He's not defending Church of England.
Well, I mean, I don't have any religion, and I don't think religion should be a thing anyway. I mean, I don't care about it. I mean, you can.
Religion is a private thing. It's yourself.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it, completely. But what's happening here?
But Islamic faith isn't changing, you know, despite what a lot of people will tell you, it's not changing the laws of the land. It's not impeding.
Oh, yes, it is.
What is? What law has the Islamic faith changed?
At the moment, nothing, but it will do. They've got the Islamic courts here. We got British courts.
Listen, for what it's worth, I agree. I don't think there should be Islamic courts. I absolutely don't. But they are not something that is impacting on the British courts.
Not yet. But how many Islamic courts have you got? 1, 2, 3, there's 100 and odd.
Yeah, there are.
Keep climbing.
And I agree. I don't think there should be a second tier of law. I absolutely don't, especially a legal system, that disadvantages women particularly. But I don't see that is not taking over British law. And just to say, but it will, it doesn't mean that it will.
It will, and there is no stopping it. Islam,
well, there is stopping
wherever it goes, Islam spreads its fate. Wherever it goes, there is no way. You couldn't do what you want, your English thing in their country. You couldn't do your English thing. You abide by their laws completely.
No, but that does make us better than that, then, doesn't it? That makes us stronger and more confident of our way of life. And it makes them that they see it as a weakness in their way of, particularly in Afghanistan. What a weak society Afghanistan is.
You made a mistake. If you have a white paint and you had a blob of any other colour in it, you've taken the white away.
But why is that? Why is that a problem? Why is whiteness in it a thing? I mean, historically, we were all black. Right, we were all black. The human beings were, and then they moved to different parts of the globe, and nature said that in cooler climates we didn't need quite so much melatonin in our skin to defend us from the sun, so we became whiter.
I'm not talking about the colour of skin.
Well, you just did. You said you add any colour to white and it changes colour. I don't think there's a problem in that.
That was a metaphor. It had nothing to do with race or creed. That was a metaphor. What you're mixing is this. This is it. You put Frenchmen here, France doesn't become France. You put Italians here, it doesn't become Italian. You put any other pair, the Indians didn't make England.
Yeah, but we're not. Putting Afghanis here hasn't made us Afghanistan.
No, but it's making us Muslim.
No, it's not making us Muslim. I'm not Muslim. You're not Muslim.
No, you're not. You're not giving it time. Where Muslims get in, it's a seed. Once it's in, it spreads and it takes over. You've only to look.
Well, then we have to be more confident and more robust, and go. If it's religion you're worried about, go to church. If it's culture you're worried about, strengthen our culture.
It's not even a religion. You don't understand the word takeover. You haven't understood the word takeover.
My understanding of the English language is actually pretty good, and I do understand the word takeover. I'm just not seeing what you're seeing. I don't believe there is, at this stage, a takeover.
There's two words: assimilation, takeover. There's a great difference between those two words. If you can't understand assimilation, which it should be, it isn't assimilation, it's takeover.
But because they have a right to practice their own religion.
Yes, but Islam is not compatible with our culture and society and the way we live.
Well, I definitely agree that the extreme form of Islam in certain parts of the world absolutely has got nothing to do with the way we live and this culture. But you've got to remember that a lot of, particularly women, are escaping those places, such as Afghanistan, because they don't agree with that either. And they don't want to live under those strict Islamic laws, otherwise they wouldn't come here, right?
That's true. I've one question only.
No, I mean, look, it's fine, and we can have discussions, but you've got to remember that there's a lot of people trying to escape that horrendous...
I really understand that. Here's a question for you. With all the scandal of the sex grooming, why was it swept under a carpet by Keir Starmer?
It shouldn't have been. It absolutely shouldn't have been. If there is, absolutely, you know, that was disgusting, and it was born out of a fear of not wanting to be seen as being racist, and that was the wrong thing to do. It was wrong-headed then, and it's wrong-headed now. And it shouldn't have been swept under the carpet any more than all of the gangs that are of people of white descent. It's disgusting, and they should all be imprisoned. And anybody that enabled it should be too. Right, thank you for your call. Joel, great to talk to you. I've got to take a very quick break for the news, but I will be back. Don't go anywhere.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit, but actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many tens of kilometers have to be covered on foot by these migrants, and as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here.
Hello and a very good afternoon. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 4 o'clock, and then Alex Phillips will be here to keep you company. So she'll be in the studio at the top of the hour. I've got some latest news for you. If you're thinking if you're going to head off to Brussels or to Paris for the new year, Eurostar, there was a problem earlier on today where you were being told not to turn up there, but Eurostar will resume services to Europe today, but said the earlier power supply issue remains and strongly advises you as a passenger to postpone your journey. In other words, what I would do if I had a ticket is I'd be phoning them or checking online to see if and when my train was back up to speed, as it were. Don't just head down to King's Cross, otherwise you'll just end up at the Champagne Bar and it'll all go horribly wrong from there. Trust me. So make sure you call or check online before you head down to King's Cross if you're planning to go across the channel today by Eurostar. But they will resume at some point today. But at the moment, of course, there's a massive backlog. So I just wanted to bring you up to date with that. John in Blackpool, we've been talking about Britishness, what it is to be British, as The Guardian reveals that 1 in 3 people believe Britishness is dependent on being born here in the UK. And John in Blackpool says, afternoon, being British is saying thank you and meaning it. I like that. Thank you. Thank you for that, John. And I mean it. Most sincerely. And we were also talking about the New Year's Honours List at one point, and Andrew in Salisbury said the only people I think deserve to be knighted was Sir Les Patterson and Dame Edna Everage. They had class, and I agree with that as well, but they've already got their honours. Brilliant characters. Brilliant, absolutely wonderful. Right, so I'm still taking your calls on Britishness. What is it to be British? If you don't think it is you have to be born here, what is it that you think makes us British? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. You can text as well, put the word talk and your message to 87222. For those of you not looking at the screen, I'm going to need to tell you that the calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back. Right. Right now, what we're doing this week is we're asking top journalists to come up with their top stories of 2025, because it has been, it has been a relentless year of news. I've been in this game for a long time. 2025 was exhausting. You couldn't switch off your radio or your television for 5 minutes without missing something incredibly significant. So we've invited, I'd say top journalist. He's all right. He's done all right for himself. Former BBC senior correspondent and author, Andrew Hosken. Also, to be fair, my brother. A very good afternoon to you, Andrew. How was Christmas?
Good afternoon, Petrie. It was great.
Yeah.
I think for both of us.
Yeah, it was all right, wasn't it? Yeah.
Brilliant.
I like
Very
my
nice,
presents anyway. So thank you
so
very much indeed. Now, Andrew, like I was just saying, this has been one of those years in news where it's been head spinning. I've not been able to rest all year for fear of missing. Switch it off for 5 minutes as a big story happens. So I'm interested to see what your picks are, particularly for the year, because you had a smorgasbord to choose from.
Yeah, I've chosen a couple of stories that probably aren't likely to sort of feature in many people's.
That's fine. That's what we wanted.
Because they're funny and quirky. But I've picked stories which I think illustrate a bigger picture, a bigger story. But as you say, the news cycle spins faster and faster and faster, like a washing machine these days. It really does. I don't know whether it's being driven by social media. A lot of it is, but nevertheless. With heads of state tweeting out and all the rest of it, politicians, governments are setting their own news agendas, if you like, and it's very difficult for the media to catch up because everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing social media, so I think that's also very tough for the mainstream media to keep up.
Yeah, it has been breakneck speed. This last year, the 2025, I think, has been the fastest I've ever known it. I'm just hoping it will slow down a little bit in 26, but I don't think it will. So tell me what your first pick is for 25.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to start with Donald Trump. Okay, and I've picked a couple of stories which I think, again, illustrate sort of bigger picture. I think that has been the seminal thing that's changed everything. It's the most important, most powerful country in the world, so it really matters who runs it. And Donald Trump, this is his second presidency, and already everything has changed, not only in America, but also abroad. Relationships that were there, the post-war consensus, looks like it's breaking apart, which is going to have massive ramifications for all of us. in Europe in particular. So I picked a couple of quirky kind of stories that kind of, I think, illustrate that. And the first one was the tweeting out, if you remember, of that extraordinary AI-generated film about Trump Gaza.
Oh my goodness, I'd forgotten about that.
For those people,
amazing.
But well, for those people, I mean, it was a satirical AI-generated piece of footage. It was generated, invented by a guy called Solo Avital, who's a Los Angeles-based filmmaker, and he put it out sort of as a bit of a satirical film, because Donald Trump had a few weeks earlier talked about turning Gaza into a well, we can see it now.
Yeah.
This war zone, which has been completely destroyed, into a tourist resort. And there we are. You see Elon Musk on the beach. It all looks very nice. I've been to Gaza a few times. It certainly doesn't look anything like that. You can see Trump's golden head on a balloon. There's Trump, money flowing down onto the children, and Elon again eating some hummus. There's big Donald statue there.
A huge gold statue of Donald Trump.
That's what sort of did it for me, was seeing Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu sipping cocktails on a beach. I could probably have done without that image in my mind.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, this is it was an extraordinary thing for a president of the United States to do. And there's lots of about Donald Trump, which is kind of unknowable. I mean, he does say very, very funny things, but on the other side, you think, well, has he got a sense of humor? He seems very thin-skinned. He doesn't like people mocking him. And he's been, for example, chasing after the late-night comedian hosts that America is famous for, like Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, who was taken off the air for a while this year, as you know, following criticism from Trump's acolytes. So it's difficult to know whether he was sort of tweeting this out as a joke. But at the
I don't think he was. I think he thought that this would look great.
Well, it wasn't very funny, I think. A lot of Palestinians didn't think it was very funny, and a lot of other people didn't find it very funny. It just seemed to be, particularly in the context when people are actually talking about expelling the Palestinians from Gaza and moving them to Africa, incredible stories that are going around, whether they're conspiracy theories or not. But nevertheless, it is an extraordinary thing to have tweeted out. I mean, when you consider the tens of thousands of people who've died in this conflict, I mean, 2,000 Israelis, more than 70,000 Palestinians since since the attacks of October 2023. So it was sort of in bad taste. I think we can say do that. But again, it's sort of, for me, it's why 2025 feels a bit unreal. It's kind of where Orwell meets Monty Python in some respects. These stories you think only satirists could have dreamt them up, and in fact the satirists did actually dream up this footage, and then it was posted out by Donald Trump. So I just think 2025, as I say, has had this unreal feel about it for me. The world seems to be tipped upside down, a bit topsy-turvy, and trying to make sense of the new landscape, I think, has been a struggle for commentators and journalists all over the world.
Oh, it certainly has, and I think him putting out that AI generated video was an indication of what we saw more from him. That was kind of a slap in the face for us all to go, oh right, this is what it's going to look like. And subsequently he's put out videos of him dumping excrement on protesters, of him flying a plane, AI generated again, him as Superman. He seems to love a meme, and that has been new. That sort of level of that close contact, if you like, with somebody as powerful as Mr. Trump.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Because it seems to be done independent of his press operations, communications.
All overnight.
Yeah. And they don't seem to mind. He'd be up there at 4 o'clock in the morning tweeting out crazy things about having just met Jesus and things like that, and it's become normal.
Yeah.
It's just extraordinary, and you sort of have to step back sometimes, think, hang on a minute, this is not normal. And just because it's happening every day, it doesn't make it any more normal. Well,
that's kind of the point, though, isn't it? That like the shock and awe that he did when he first came into power, that sort of swamping the media with all these executive orders and things. The point is to make it normal. That is the point. He wanted that to be normal, so it is now seen as normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Petrie, when you consider what we've been used to up until now, which is politicians giving very polished performances, with very rehearsed messages and message lines, never going off script, never going off piste. And yet we have this old chap sort of tweeting whatever he feels like.
But that's what people love about him, right? That's what the mega crowd love. He's transparent, they say.
Yeah, it gives them a feeling that they're in contact with him, and he's in contact with them. He's communicating directly to you, which I think a lot of politicians haven't got that. A lot of journalists haven't quite understood it. They just think it's nuts.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Actually, there is
very powerful
method behind the so-called madness, but it is very powerful. It is very effective. So, and it is him getting his message through, undiluted.
And like you said, he says there's never been a more transparent president, which I don't think is true, but he appears transparent. The other one, just before we go to the break, is J.D. Vance's visit to Greenland. And as we know, Greenland has come right back up onto the top of the list for Donald Trump, as he says he must have it.
Yeah, well, he's just appointed the governor for Louisiana, Jeff Landry, to be his sort of special envoy to Greenland. I don't think either Greenland or Denmark, of which Greenland is a part.
Yeah,
it is actually a part of Denmark's sovereign territory. Really want an envoy and have shown no inclination whatsoever to hand Denmark and its people over to the United States. But this was another extraordinary event. This was J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, going to Greenland, apparently uninvited, with his wife Usha, and sort of being marooned in a military base after having sort of gad-handed some perplexed Inuit in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. And he cut a rather pathetic figure, I thought. But again, it was extraordinary because Denmark is a member of NATO. It is an ally. And to talk about annexing a part of a NATO ally, a member of the European Union, and all the rest of it, is again extraordinary and led to the kind of topsy-turviness of the news agenda for me, and how unreal the world feels and how much different it feels from just last year. I mean, they do seem to be in earnest about this. I mean, whether the people of Greenland want to swap this very socialized social medicine, all the rest of it, the benefits and the pensions, all the rest of it, for something that the United States may offer, I doubt it. I mean, they've been offered $10,000 each if they agree to be annexed by the United States. But again, there's a bigger picture here, because Greenland, when you look at it strategically, is very, very important and has apparently these very precious raw earth, materials and all the rest of it. So you can see strategically why it is. And of course, he's also talking about annexing Canada and occupying Canada, which again is nuts and has upset the Canadians hugely and Canada's many, many friends around the world. But again, there is a sort of strategic sort of impulse which is being expressed here by the America about wanting to have these very, very important territories, not least, of course, because of water, of which Canada has a huge amount, not least in the Great Lakes that border with the United States. So behind this sort of apparently absurd spectacle, you have also this real geopolitics and an insight into the sort of MAGA mindset and the mindset of Donald
that
Trump.
Expansionist attitude that Trump has, which is, after him saying America first, but he said this expansion is part of America first, and he's willing to use the military in order to achieve it.
And this willingness to rip up
friendships and
relationships. I mean, Denmark has given access to America.
Yeah, they've already got a base there.
They're for the asking, not for the taking.
Yeah,
that is the difference.
Yeah.
So it is an extraordinary way to deal with, as he's shown through his tariff policy, of upsetting what were America's closest allies and friends, and being seen to curry favor with dictators such as Vladimir Putin.
And Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has kind of again, it's an absurd story in many ways. But it shows a bigger picture, a bigger story, and a clearer insight.
Yeah, and it's not going to go away in 2026 either. Andrew, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment with some more of his picks for 2025. Hello, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour when Alex Phillips will be taking over. And with me is Andrew Hosken, who is a former BBC senior correspondent and author, going through some of the choices that he made from last year, from 2025. And Andrew, unfortunately, Ukraine is going to go into next year, it seems, at the moment, the Ukraine-Russia war, and that'll be year 4 if it makes it to February. But you wanted to particularly highlight something that Ukraine did in March.
Yeah, well, actually, it was the end of May.
Oh, was it?
So I might have given you the wrong date, so apologies. Yeah, this was an incredible military operation that Ukraine launched against Russia. What they did was they managed to get these lorries. The lorry drivers didn't know they were Russian lorry drivers. And these lorries were going to these 4 air bases. Now, at these air bases, the Russians had these strategic bombers, which they were using against civilian populations in Ukraine. And these lorries parked outside there. Now, on top of these lorries, there was all these wooden shed. Now, at an order, like in a movie, automatically the shed roof came off, and these drones took off from the top of these lorries. It was called Operation Spiderweb, and wiped out these airfields, these 4 airfields, took out 40 planes, 40 of these strategic bombers. I mean, it had been planned for 18 months. Quite brilliant. And to me, it's again an example of just how ingenious the Ukrainians have been in the defense of their country and their culture and all the rest of it. You know, the way they've managed to assassinate key Russian generals in Moscow, the way they've launched these extraordinary drone strikes. And this was, I'm sure they'll be making films about
this. There's got to be a film made about that. I mean, that was an incredible bit of warcraft. You know, if you can ever say that about war, but it was extraordinary. Like you said, these lorry drivers had no idea what they were carrying, and it was just the very top of the lorries that had a slightly sort of curved roof, I think. And then when that lifted up, all these drones came out. And really, that was crushing for Russia. That not only was it embarrassing for Russia, but also it proved that they have got vulnerabilities, and it wiped out those very necessary aircraft.
Because some of these aircraft were like 4,000 kilometres away out of Siberia.
In Siberia, yeah, which is an area that I've been to. So
yeah, so they were tucked out safely out of the way of the Ukrainians, so the Russians thought. And again, because a lot of the imagery from this horrible conflict, and I was in Ukraine as a BBC reporter in 2014 when the invasion really began, which is in February 2014, when they started going into Donetsk and other places and Crimea. But the conflict as it is now is almost, people talk about it being like a World War II conflict with tanks, of mass casualties, the sorts of casualties you might see at Stalingrad or these kind of battles from World War II. Yet on top of that, we've seen the emergence of the drone in this conflict.
They've become world leaders, haven't they, in drone technology?
They have, yeah, and they're developing all the time. So the drones and the people who control these drones are highly skilled people. And all the technology is improving, and it will transform warfare in the future, I'm sure.
I mean, there's a lot of countries now are turning to Ukraine to learn from what they've, necessity being the mother of invention, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
They're turning now to Ukraine. They've become a world leader in drone technology, recognised also by America.
War is a great catalyst for war technology.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was where the atomic bomb came out of, the bouncing bomb and all the rest of the radar, all these incredible innovations.
Yeah.
War is the innovative sort of power there.
It is, tragically. Let's jump forward now because we're running out of time. But the golden toilet that was stolen from Blenheim Palace, my favourite bit of knowledge about this is that it was an art exhibition called America. Which a lot of people didn't realise at the time, but it was nicked, this massive toilet, and at weight, in terms of weight, but you could actually go and pee in it.
Yes, it was functional. It was 18-karat gold. Yeah. It was made by a guy called Maurizio Catalan. I mean, it's modelled on a laboratory, so I'm not and made out of gold. So I'm not entirely sure where the artistic merit comes into it, because it's it looks like a lavatory. There's nothing different about it than any other lavatory, except that it's made out of gold.
It was a statement on America, wasn't it?
Yes, it was having a go at America's apparent
wealth.
Greed and wealth. And in fact, apparently it was offered to Donald Trump. I read that somewhere. I have no way of substantiating it. Anyway, to his credit, he didn't accept it. I think that probably might be a bridge too far for Donald Trump. But it was, so it was placed at Blenheim Palace, and it was actually stolen about 6 years ago. So the convictions for the two men who stole it were this year. So they were caught, their collars were felt, and they were nabbed. And they basically... crooks never cease to amaze me and what they like to steal and how they steal things. Things that no one else would have thought of stealing. They steal. So they must have seen it on a visit to Blenheim Palace.
Yeah.
Which is where Winston Churchill was born, and the Dukes of Marlborough were initially seated there. And so, and it's funny because when you look at the photograph, it's in this rather squalid little cubicle toilet with a wooden lavatory roll. You'd think that. Think the old lavatory might at least sort of, I don't know, be in a throne room or something.
Yeah, something. Well, again, but it's what I found when I was reading into this when it happened. What I found really weird was that it was functioning, and that the guard would stand outside, and you could go. You weren't allowed to do a 2, but you could do a 1. Why would you want to do that? It's just very strange. But it was never recovered, was it? Has it been melted down?
I suspect it's been melted down. So that's the theory, because of course gold. That's what happens to gold bars when they're swiped at airports in these big heists. It's easily sort of. Although it can pop up and people can see where large quantities of gold suddenly start appearing, there's a suspicion that it would have come from a bullion heist of some kind. Yeah. But nevertheless, this lavatory would have been easily sort of melted down and made into whatever and sold on. So golden blocks.
Yeah, they never disclosed.
It exists in some form.
Somewhere.
But don't worry, Petrie, there is a replica apparently.
Oh, good.
Ripley's You'll Never Believe This, or whatever it's called.
Oh,
so
right.
People can go and see another one.
On Trafalgar Square. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd queue up and pay money to see it.
I'm not sure I'd queue up and pay money to pee in it.
I'm not sure I'd want to sit on it either. It looks very cold.
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
that is like, I mean, for me, these heists, it's like what happened at the Louvre, isn't it? Oh, yeah. I've just realised, toilet Louvre. Anyway. Yeah. Ba-bum-ching. That actually these old-fashioned robberies that are things of movies still go ahead, still happen.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a movie made about this one day. I mean, we seem to love crooks and thieves, don't we?
Yeah,
I mean, real true crime is just so massively popular with everyone.
Yeah. Oh,
and yet they tend to be pretty despicable people.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we are fascinated with them, and I'm sure there's a very funny story behind this. I think they crashed the gates down with a lorry or a van, and then sort of broke in, and the whole thing was over in 5 minutes. So
That's
smash and grab.
incredible.
You can imagine them with the striped jumpers and
literally
a bag of swag over their shoulders. They're wrenching the loo off the wall and bundling it off under their arms back into the lorry and down the M4 or wherever.
Thinking, I can't believe we got away with it. Of course, last year, what always happens at this time of year as well, everybody looks back on who we lost in terms of famous people during 2025, and you've chosen this man particularly for your story.
Ozzy Osbourne. I was never into his music. I was more of a sort of Dire Straits guy, I guess, in terms of popular music at his age. But he's listening. I sort of I'm sort of got back into I've been listening to Black Sabbath, and in fact, it's fantastic stuff. It is, and he was such a one-off and such a character for many years, and then of course he became a sort of famous reality TV star.
Well, they were the original reality TV family. I mean, they're who we blame for everything else we've got now, the Kardashians and everything else. And they were on MTV.
He was genuinely funny, wasn't he? He was
very funny, genuine. The whole family, actually. I love the whole family. They were very natural.
He was the epicenter. Of course, he had health problems later on in his life, but he was an extraordinary man. I mean, his last concert, of course, was only before he died, and contributed some £30 million to the local economy. So his timing was, it was described as a farewell concert. It was in his native Birmingham, the accent from whence he never lost.
Never lost it.
And then he dies 2 weeks later. So it's extraordinary sort of timing. But he was an amazing guy. I mean, just the stories about him, you know, biting the heads off bats and things like that, which apparently he really did. I mean, someone threw.
But he thought it was a fake when he did it.
He thought it was a rubber bat.
Yeah.
I find that difficult to believe. I mean, it wouldn't. Whatever.
He was taking drugs at the time.
Yes,
so...
well, that's pretty powerful stuff.
That is powerful
your
stuff.
nose in that case. to confuse a living bat, a pipistrel bat, with a, well, I suspect it was a pipistrel bat, with a rubber toy bat.
Yeah.
You've got to be really on something very strong to do that.
Yeah, I don't think it was just Calpol or anything. So
well, he did go and have to have rabies jabs afterwards. So it was quite a serious incident, not just for the bat, but but also for him. But that aside, he was an extraordinarily talented artist.
He really was, and
wonderful musician. Yeah.
Wonderful musician, and he very nearly gave up on it. But he was just such a, like you said, such an amazing talent, and very, very funny. And his long-suffering wife, who absolutely adored him, Sharon, and she's still finding it difficult to go. In fact, the whole family really are missing him. Right there, you can see it. It's visceral that they loved him so much, as did Birmingham and the rest of the country. Andrew, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
What are you doing for New Year?
Oh, I'm going to have a quiet night in, I think.
Yeah, me too.
With a meal and a glass of champagne.
Lovely. We'll send my love to Charlotte, won't you? And Freddie. And listen, have a good one, and I will see you in the new year. Andrew Hosken, their senior BBC correspondent, former senior BBC correspondent and author, and also my big brother. Just to be open and honest with you. Because I never want you to be lied to. I'm going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to be talking about what it is to be British.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, all the schedules go back to normal, but Jeremy Kyle is launching his brand new breakfast show. He'll be with you 6 until 10 on the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. That's what it's called. So make sure that you are up and about for that. So Jeremy Kyle takes over the airways permanently on the breakfast show from Monday. I'm back to my show, which I would say 10 till 1, but I think it might be 11 till 1. I'm not sure yet, but we'll know. We'll know closer to the day. As for the rest of this week, I'm in here tomorrow, 1 till 4, and also again on Friday, 1 until 4. We're talking about Britishness, and John in Blackpool has sent another message saying being British is getting your collar felt and apologising. I think being British is being bumped into and apologising for being bumped into, because that's both people are, if you're both British, you both apologise, even only one of you has caused the bumping into-ness. So I think that's very, very British. Oh, I'm so sorry. You didn't do anything. You're just standing there. So I think that's pretty British as well. But do give me a call and let me know what you think is Britishness. 03444 99 1000. Now, a lot of people will say that being British is about royalty. It's about having a royal family, and that, well, other countries have royal families, but not like ours, right? But very recently, of course, the royal family, we've discovered a wrong 'un within the royal family. He has subsequently been turned into a mere citizen like you and me, and of course I'm talking about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He has been removed, all of his titles have been removed from him, and he cut a very lonely figure over Christmas when he was seen out on his own in a brand new Land Rover, I think, or Range Rover, one of them. A sensitive file about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been accidentally released by Number 10 in what they call an administrative error. The file was about royal visits from the early 2000s when Andrew was serving as UK trade envoy. It was released as part of the government's annual transfer of records to the National Archives under the 20-year rule and briefly made available to journalists before being withdrawn. The documents, heavily redacted, should never have been intended for public release. But why? Why shouldn't they have been for public release? And particularly now that Andrew is no longer a royal, do they still deserve the level of privacy that they once had? Well, here to discuss this and other royal issues is Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Rupert, season's greetings to you.
Likewise, season greetings to you.
Rupert, what would you make of this? I mean, particularly for people like yourself, you need this background information. I mean, this particular item wasn't particularly interesting, but should anything be redacted on the royal family, apart from security issues?
Well, this, I think, is the debate of how the royal family play the PR game going forward. And matters of finances, I think, are something the royal family do need to be very mindful of, because we are living in straitened times. Everyone's finances are being analysed, taxed, you name it, whatever. And the royal family should not be above the law in many ways. But for Andrew, once again, this is time when he was dubbed Air Miles Andy, and this is obviously a time around when a lot of these Epstein letters have come out around this time at the sort of end of the 90s, turn of the century, when he was traveling the world representing this country. And you know, what we do know is he definitely liked that job and made sure he took full advantage of it in terms of the first class travel and everything. So it is, once again, Andrew does seem to be the one who bears the brunt of everything. Now, you probably would say, Petrie, quite rightly, well, it's his own darn fault. And yes, it is his own darn fault. And even then, you know, round about that, his arrogance was well known, and his behaviour was definitely something that shocked people on some of the trade missions that he went on. And it is interesting that they have redacted these statements, but I do think it is something the King and William need to be looking at as to how royal finances are sort of what goes out there to make sure that the public feel that they're behaving within the confines of the law. Because there were lots of reports, weren't there, when Andrew had this job, that he would take family with him. He would take his daughters with him on some trips and introduce them to powerful people, enabled them to build up their own sort of contacts book, that some of the work that he was doing wasn't necessarily entirely for the country, that it would have been for some of his friends, including Epstein at the time. And those are things that I think, as the public, we do have the right to know, because that was paid for by the British purse, particularly when he took his kids with him, right? Yeah, and there was definitely talk there that it was about feathering the Andrew nest rather than the Great Britain PLC nest. And there were definitely allegations. And we even saw in the redacted from some of these Epstein's files about trips to Peru, which he was going on. And then there were talk of some of the letters that were around there and some of the coming out in the Epstein files that he used these. He may be going there on the behalf of Great Britain, but he definitely made time to enjoy himself, which was, and that seems to have come out in the Epstein letters. And there were definite talk at the time that, do what he did for on behalf as a trade envoy, but ultimately see what he could get out of it, because he thought that he was, extremely important. His arrogance played out even then. It was all about him. And he's got it, and he thought if he wanted to bring his daughters, well, why not? That was his, and that's been his problem throughout. His sense of entitlement goes beyond what people might actually deem as acceptable. If you're representing this country, it shouldn't be basically that you bring a lot of other people freeloading off the back of what you are doing. And he did get himself into a spot of bother at times. And so I think these just reflect that Andrew is once again, everything that he has done is now being scrutinized and sort of analyzed, maybe almost to the, maybe the rest of the royal family are thinking, there for the grace of God go I. But, I think that's probably going a little too far. But in terms of Andrew's behavior, it once again suggests that, did he behave as he should? And that's always been the allegations against him.
Andrew's fall from grace has been quite extraordinary, hasn't it? I mean, he was once the nation's sweetheart. He was a decorated naval officer. And that's the only award I think he's ever earned and should keep. And he was handsome. He was every girl's dream. To the lonely figure that he cut this Christmas without his daughters there, who made what appears to be a strategic decision to side with the royal family and leave Daddy on his own.
Yes, they definitely did make a strategic decision, and off they went to Sandringham. Yes, it is. When you think, obviously, he fought in the Falklands War, but there was always an underlying undercurrent about him. I knew him from when I was 8 years of age. For 5 years, I was at school with him. There's always was an undercurrent of his behaviour dominating. Even then, he may have looked the dashing sailor, and obviously when after Diana got married, and obviously marries Fergie, and it was a bit show busy, went a bit over the top, but he did have that reputation. But unfortunately, he's not been able to maintain it, and the only reason he's not been able to maintain it is because of him and his sense of entitlement and people getting exasperated. And you see it throughout his life that he definitely thought he was, and I've heard stories about the way he behaves even in private company, wanting to make sure everybody knows just how royal he is. And even now, there are sort of talk that some of his behaviour he still can't quite come to terms that he's not a fully paid up member of the royal family and is now just a normal citizen. So he's not coming to terms with his situation.
What is the future for Andrew now? I mean, obviously the rest of the royal family just want his name to disappear. They just want him to go away quietly. Maybe if he did go and live in Dubai, that would be a good thing. That was hinted at some point. But what does his future look like, particularly with William? Because we saw William appear to give him a real talking to at a funeral recently. William seems to have run out of patience, if you like, with the older royal, ex-royal.
I think every time, you see, even when you look back to Sandringham this year, the story was, well, Andrew wasn't there, but his daughters were there, and you go. So that's the problem for the royal family. They wanted, yes, we saw lovely pictures of William and the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children doing the walk and engaging with the people who went to Sandringham on that morning to catch a glimpse of the royal family. But the reporting of it was, look who's not there. And this is the problem for the royal family. You know, everything gets slightly dominated. Probably this is what William probably finds frustrating. The King likewise, that we're not able to do what things that are seen as good PR. It all comes round to, well, the story gets turned on its head. It's about, you know, Beatrice and Eugenie going to Sandringham, and Andrew then photographed in his Range Rover or whatever it was on the Christmas Day, cutting this forlorn figure. That became the story, and that's the frustration for the royal family.
Well, hopefully, I mean, maybe it'll quieten down. Maybe if he just disappears for a while, Rupert, you never know. Victoria's just sent a message saying, I was born in 1972 and Andrew was always referred to as Randy Andy in the press and publicly. This is not a surprise to any of us over 50. So yes, it was well, I can't possibly comment, but I do know that was the nickname. And he was seen with lots of starlets. It's come to haunt him in a way. Yeah. His behaviour has come to haunt him, that moniker, because obviously, you know, he seemed to want to enjoy a certain style of lifestyle, and that Randy Ant moniker was, you know, definitely one that was very public at the time. I'm a little older than your texter, so having gone to prep school with him. Yes, leopards don't change their spots much. No, well, that's what they say. Rupert, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you through the year. Have a wonderful new year, and I will talk to you next year as well. Rupert Bell there, Talk's royal correspondent.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Talk, and it's Petrie Hosken here with you until the top of the hour, and then it'll be Alex Phillips who's taking over for your drive time show. We've been talking this afternoon about what it is to be British after a report came out that suggested that many people in the country now, more than before, more than a couple of years ago, now think in order to be truly British, you have to have been born here. And some of you have gone further than that and said actually you have had your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents born here in order to be British. So I've been asking you what Britishness is. Ian has said, for me, it's Shakespeare, the best rock music ever, old Land Rovers, wet dogs in the pub, banter, politeness, wit, mugs of tea and pints of warm ale, fair play and kindness. I think that does it. That's pretty good. Gloria has said, though, I'm an Italian American and have lived in the UK for 43 years. I love the UK, the art, the culture, the music and the literature. I choose to live here. My father always blamed the Beatles, but I don't feel British or even American. I am Italian in temperament, customs and ethnicity, which I can trace back 500 years. I think it's very complicated, isn't it, where our heart is, where we feel we are. And David said, mutual respect is what makes us British, and it always will be. So that's a couple of texts. There are quite a few more, but I'll try and read a little bit more before the top of the hour. But first, let's go to Roy, who's in Hampshire, to tell us what he thinks it is to be British. Hello.
Hello, Petrie. Well, years ago, lovey, when you went to the cinema, when the film was finished, they played the national anthem.
Yeah.
When the TV finished, when it used to finish at 11 o'clock at night, you had the epilogue, they played the national anthem.
They did.
You know, I'm an old soldier, lovey. I fought all over the world for this country, and so have my uncles, my father, my great-grandfather, my old gran. She was bombed out during the war, you know, and she did war work, and so did, you know, my dad. It's the politicians that are killing this country, lovey.
Do you think so? They're just not... But what is it to be British? Do you think that there should be a return of the playing of a national anthem more often? And
well, there should be. You know, people should be patriotic, lovey. But you see, the government we've got at the moment, they're a load of flaming communists. They hate this country. You know, it goes back to Blair.
They would argue that they don't, but I can see why your opinion would be that they do, but they would argue that they don't.
I'll give you for instance. When Brown was Prime Minister, he stopped us having Britannia on the 2p coin. He wouldn't allow it anymore. We'd always had Britannia on some of our coins. He stopped it. I mean,
didn't he also no, it wasn't him, was it? Who was it that stopped us getting the euro? But anyway, look, he did us a great favour by separating the Bank of England from government, and I'll always be grateful for that. But so you think that it's just been watering it down, that side of Britishness?
Well, it's being patriotic, lovey. As I say, you know, I've fought all over the world for this country. My family have. And we've always been patriotic. You know, you listen to Royal Britannia. The BBC wanted to stop us singing that. You know, the land of hope and glory.
Oh, at the proms, yeah.
The proms, you know, it makes the hair stand up on the, you know, when we sing it on the back of your neck. It's one of the greatest nights of the week.
But are we still that country of you know, Rule Britannia?
It's about 80% of us are still are, lovey. You know, they say that people wouldn't fight for this country anymore. They would. They still fight for this country. I mean, I think this whole country's gone downhill since my old queen died. I mean, I miss her terribly. I cannot, you know, get it in my head that she's not here anymore.
Oh, I mean, thank goodness for her that she isn't, to see what's happened to Andrew, right?
I'm glad she's not here for, you know, for that one reason, you know, what's happened. But
I mean, she caught the end of it, or the beginning of it, I should say, before she died. That must have been awful for her.
Yeah, but you know, my old mum, she used to tell me, you know, on VE Day, she was there at Buckingham Palace with the crowd.
Yeah. Well, she worked during the war, didn't she, our Queen? She was incredible. She was a driver.
Yeah, well, as I said, my old gran, she was doing war work, and she finished work at 3 o'clock one afternoon, and she lived in Pimlico. And luckily, she had the basement flat. She finished work, and she was having a nap. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a doodlebug, a flying bomb, fell on the house.
Wow.
And they didn't think anybody survived. She crawled out of there at 7:30 at night on her hands and knees.
Wow.
My old gran, yeah. And while she was doing that, Uncle Jack, my uncle, he was at Al Alamein, he was at Sicily, he was one of the first troops ashore D-Day morning. His brother, my Uncle Doug, he was out in Burma fighting the Japanese. And Uncle Derek, I mean, he was on the aircraft carrier, which was torpedoed. The crew managed to save her, and they were ordered to sail to Canada to get her repaired.
Wow.
You know, as I say, my great-grandfather, he was in the Boer War. Dad was in the First World War. You know, we've all served our country. I've got 3 brothers. We all served in the military. We've all done our bit for this country. And
was it worth it?
It was worth it at the time. My last battle, Lovey, I was out in the Falklands. And I stood there when we buried our dead.
That was a hell of a battlefield, the Falklands. People don't appreciate just how bleak that...
Yeah, but we went out there and we did our bit, mate. I mean, when I tell you what, Lovey, when we finished fighting, I had 4 rounds left. That's all the ammunition I had. I had 4 rounds left, you know, when we finished fighting.
Wow.
You know, when we walked into Stanley and you see that old bootneck, the old Royal Marine with the Union Jack on his Bergen, you know, that summed us up. We were proud.
Yeah.
We were a proud nation.
Would you do it again? Knowing what you know now?
Again. They give me my old SLR on the old brand, mate. I'd still stand there, get on the coast, mate. I could still do a bit. You know, I'm nearly 80, but I'd still do me bit. I love my country. I love my old Queen. And now we've got a king. I don't know about him. He's got to make his way in life. But, you know, I miss my old Queen terribly.
See, this for me, I'm so glad I spoke to you, because you are what it is to be British. I think you are British. I don't even know how I would describe that, but that is, you're British. That's it, isn't it? It's summed up in that one conversation there. Roy, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your service and for what that's given us. Final call, I think, to Matt about the New Year's honours list. Matt, what do you make of it?
Hi, good afternoon,
Good
Petrie,
afternoon.
and all the best to you and Talk listeners and viewers for New Year.
That's very kind.
I think it basically is, and it's the epitome of the establishment. You have to be a certain kind of political mind to get on the honours list, and there seems to be an ever-increasing deterioration of white men on it, and it seems to be all based on identity politics, and women's sport is massively overrepresented, obviously. Even though they have done well and they probably deserve recognition, they also go perfectly hand in hand with all the woke sort of political issues of the time.
Well, I don't know that that's true. I mean, I haven't counted how many white men are on it, but I would put a serious amount of money on the fact that they're still massively more represented than any other demographic. I mean, it's only just recently that women of any colour have reached the levels of getting awards. And I did ask earlier, is that just tokenism? Should these footballers be getting awards? And I'm not entirely sure they should for doing